All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited to have you here. Again, welcome to Founders Fireside. This is an event hosted by ACM, BE, and UPE, and we are so excited for you to be here. It's going to be an awesome couple hours. We have a ton of founders who are going to come and talk about their experiences, their journey, and how they got to where they are. So get ready to be inspired for sure. The way this is going to work is that we have our founders ready to kind of talk about their journey. We'll be starting off with some questions, and then later we're actually going to turn it over to you, and you all can ask questions as well. And the way we're going to be doing this is through Slido. So if you haven't used it before, it's pretty intuitive. The link is dropped in the chat, and it's also going to be on the slides. And what you can do is you can go there and type in your question, and you can ask it either anonymously or you can put your name down. If you put it anonymously, then the moderator will ask the question for you. If you are putting your name down, make sure it matches your Zoom name so we know who you are, and label it with the speaker that you want to ask your question to. So when it comes time to asking your question, you'll receive a DM saying that you're the next person to ask your question. We'll be able to unmute you. As of right now, no one can unmute themselves, but if you are asking a question, we'll be sure to change those permissions and you'll be able to ask that question. Just keep in mind that, again, this meeting is being recorded. So if you do ask a question, that will be in the recording, which will be posted to YouTube after. All right, and with that, we can go ahead and get started. So I will pass it off to Riley.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ritu. So just actually before we get started with our first speaker, to kind of reiterate what Ritu was saying about the Slido. So as you can see in the bottom left corner, there is the link to put in your audience questions. So this section is going to be about 30 minutes. The first 12 minutes are going to be for moderator Q&A from myself. And the rest of the time, we'll try to open it up for audience Q&A, which you can put as anonymous, which I'll read out loud. Or you can put your name in which we'll ask to unmute yourself. So without further ado, please give a virtual round welcome to our very first speaker, Ritu Narayan. Thank you, Ritu, for coming.
Thank you, Riley, for having me here. I'm excited.
Excellent. So just to actually jump straight into things, if you don't mind, you are the founder of Zūm, which is a leader in the student transportation industry. But about yourself, do you mind, giving the audience a quick introduction about yourself, your background, maybe a bit about your professional career and how you ended up as a founder today?
Yeah, that sounds great. So I am originally from India. I spent my early years growing up there. I was born in a family of 4 siblings. I'm the oldest of them. And I used to watch, my parents were the first ones to come out of the smaller town where his brothers and other live doing their business. And he was the first one to actually do a professional degree and start working. And I used to often watch that all the women around me, for some reason, they would not go for higher education and they were very happy doing what they were doing. And I was very determined early on that I'm going to do something very different. And that was a driver, that curiosity was a driver. I ended up being the first computer engineer in my family, and I went to Delhi Institute of Technology. It's one of the top institutes in India. And that was an eye-opening experience. There was a lot of excitement about computer engineering and the tools that were available. All of us were able to build and create, even though these were still the early times. The email was coming up, and this was the dot-com time era where new web tools were coming in. I used to hear about Silicon Valley and how there are tons of startups there and innovation is happening at a rapid pace. And India was still a little behind in the innovation pace there. And after graduation, I decided to apply to the colleges here, and I had admissions from Stanford and Berkeley here, and I came over here. But interestingly, I decided at that time, because of how the economy and learning was, I wanted to not study and work. So I ended up choosing to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers as a management consultant at that time. Interestingly, one tidbit that I do want to share with you, how the college career can differ from what you think and what actually happens. Uh, Always I had this two sides of me, where one side I was very interested in math and science, and I was good at it. On the other side, there was this part of me which was very interested in humanities and storytelling and design and visual, and I could never figure out how to have a job that could combine these two together, because most jobs that I saw around me were either analytical, or they were like not analytical, and they were into the other side of the thing. I could not find something that used the both the sides of brain. And then interestingly, when I was in management consulting, I came across some people who used to call themselves product manager, and they were coming and pitching their products, and I saw they were designing their products, and I was like, wow, this is the job that I didn't know existed, and this is what I must be and should be doing, because it requires that both sides of the brain that I could use. And after finding it out, I very quickly changed to the product manager role, and I would say there was no looking back for me from there, because you can just keep growing in that area and build products, do find new markets, and do a lot of innovation, involve yourself end to end in different sides of things. So I worked as a product manager in Oracle, and then moved to eBay. And it was when I was at eBay, I actually got very interested in building platform and marketplaces, because eBay at that time was the biggest marketplace. And it was eye-opening to see how people sitting in different parts of the world could really earn money on the platform, and how it was empowering people. And simultaneously, in my personal life, my two kids started going to school, and I had this problem of how can I pick them up and drop them off while I'm still at work? And I didn't want to give up my work, but every time that arrangement fell apart, I was just at the crossroads. Should I be leaving my work, or should I be continuing taking care of my children? And that's when this whole thought came to me that technology has moved so far, and mobility paradigms have changed. People have access to mobile phones, but nothing has changed in this area. My mom had also left job 30 years back to raise me and my siblings. She was an educator. And here I was in Silicon Valley working on some of the top products, and I was at the same crossroads. So with this very simple idea, I didn't know how I was going to solve the problem, but I had tried all the solutions that existed in the market, and I had the knowledge of building the products and building the platforms. And I just left my job at eBay and decided to build a company, or at least try how it should be done. Interestingly, the problem resonated with people so well that resources just came along to me as I started doing this project. And I incubated the company at Stanford Business School, where I took a year off after eBay and basically did a bunch of courses full time, and designed the company over there to do user research and other things. And after graduation from there, I started working on this company full time, along with actually my two brothers who had very complementary skills to me. And we raised our Series A from Sequoia Capital, which is the top venture capital firm in the world. And we are now today a Series C company with we have raised over $77 million. And in the process, the solution evolved a lot. Initially, it was Uber for kids, but slowly the solution became modernizing student transportation, which is actually the largest mass transit system that has not been changed, and because of which parents face the problem. So here we are. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm happy to give you more details as we speak today.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm sure a lot of people in the audience will have questions about, the incredible journey that you've had to get to where you are today. As a kind of follow-up to that, actually, you mentioned back at the Delhi Institute of Technology that you were not only one of the only, females in the engineering field, But also like in that time and in that area, was there a startup culture? And at that age, did you know that you eventually wanted to start your own company? And was that an option?
Yeah. So interestingly, wherever there is a culture of building and creating, people feel very enthusiastic and empowered. Uh, and this typically, I mean, this is an era, I don't know if you know much about India, but originally India used to be a very socialist country where government determined all the rules and kinds of jobs were very traditional and bureaucratic. And this was the time, just the time when liberalization was coming and a lot of opening up of the markets were happening. And today, actually, India is the third largest market for startups. The transition in that time has happened so much. But at that time, I did not know that I wanted to be a founder. To be very honest, I used to think founders are genius. They are somebody, people who are very different. They somehow get this stroke of genius ideas and things that are there. And as part of imbibing myself into the Silicon Valley and observing people, and actually when my fear became less than the curiosity to solve my own problem, that's when my full strength desire to move into startup started. But nowadays, I mean, the platforms are so easily accessible with low code, no code, and there's so much enthusiasm, like this forum that you have put together here through hackathons and all of those things, that access to information is so good. I wish I was at the college at this time. I would definitely be starting right off the college if I was at this time.
Well, that's great to hear. And I hope the audience does appreciate, obviously, hearing the amazing stories of founders such as yourself. But as again, I guess a follow up to that, kind of moving through your journey from obviously in college, like many on this call are in, to eventually moving to the Silicon Valley and working in the corporate world as a consultant, and then a product manager at several top firms. Do you think, or how did that experience play a role in preparing you to start your own company, or did it at all?
It did a lot. So fundamentally, the foundation that I have is my number one personal habit is learning. I'm a very curious person. I'm constantly learning and absorbing from things around me. And when I think that in an atmosphere I'm not learning anymore, then I try to change my role or try to change the project or try to work on a different thing. And that has given me an opportunity, even when I was in the same company, to work on a lot of different products and projects and gain different experiences, right from incubating that idea to pitching the idea within a company, getting resources, kickstarting, and building something, and then releasing. And in the big company, one of the great thing is they already have existing user. And when you have existing millions of users and you're releasing something, how do you release the product in a way that your customers can still accept it and you don't break anything, and you're actually bringing in the revenue that was supposed to be that was promised. All of those skills and were very critical in the startup area when I was starting. I almost feel like as if, like you've heard that famous quote by Steve Jobs, that you can only connect the dots going backwards. It just feels like all the things came together. From consulting, one of the things that you learn is very quickly you have to accumulate very large teams on a project, and you are in a service industry where you want to make sure your customers are happy, and your negotiation skills in terms of requirements and what they're asking you to do and what you can do, what's good for them, and what are the best practices, convincing them. All of those are soft skills and hard skills that you develop. And when you do the startups, it just comes together for you. So for me, it was a lot of paradigms, learning about design, learning to work with engineers, learning to work with sales and marketing, learning to actually be very customer focused and customer obsessed, which is a value that I also brought to my company. Our number one value for a company is customer obsession. Like, we don't just build things in isolation. we really work on it by speaking to our customers and how customers validate. All of those things definitely helped on the startup journey.
Certainly. I think, hearing the path that you took from consulting to product management to founding your own company, I think a lot of people would kind of see that as a trajectory of learning all the skills you need and then doing it yourself for your own corporation. So that's great to hear that it supported you. But actually, reflecting backwards, through your career and where you ended up, the companies that you worked for, do you think you would have changed anything that you've done? Maybe started a company sooner or something along those lines?
Yes, one thing that I can say is a lot of times we wait and we wait to do things, and am I ready, or this thing happened, or there is no perfect moment. Looking back, I can't say that whether I would have done or not. Starting a company is a function of two things. First thing is you feeling very compelled about the idea that you want to solve, or a problem that you want to solve in the world, and that could happen very quickly to some people and motivate them, and that could happen later. The second thing that motivates people about doing the startup is actually establishing your own path and establishing your own culture and your own vision, and doing it instead of being just somebody in a big, what do you say, a big structure where you're just moving the parts that may feel. For example, for me, it would be very hard to work in a corporation, large corporation now that I've tasted this side of the things. And I've seen how you can build things and bring a large scale change on your own. But at the same time, I do have a lot of appreciation for what the corporate world provided me in terms of training. So it's very hard to say whether I would have done or not. But if there is an inkling and desire, all I can say is there is no perfect condition. Doing is the best way to learn. If you feel compelled to try a startup, the best thing is to go and work for a startup for a few years, and it'll be an accelerated path for you, and you can then go on to start your own thing. Other thing I wanted to cover from your last question was, a lot of people when they work in consulting want to move into product management, but they are not able to make that transition. And from product management, they want to start a company and they are not able to make that transition. So something I do want to comment on making transitions is always look at what's the quality of the next transition you're looking for. What is the skills you've learned in the current job that you can actually extrapolate and convince the people to give you a chance that this, because you've worked in consulting. For example, my story was in consulting, I'm doing the same job as product management, and I would describe how. And then I would say that, but it's very boring because you kickstart a project and then that project disassembles, and I have no chance to take that product that I have built for one single customer and take it to multiple customers. And now I want to bring that skills to building products so that multiple customers can use my product instead of every time me kickstarting in from the beginning and just one customer using it and then disassembling the thing. And that resonated with people really well. So in a way, there is no hard path. You can always change, but always make your transitions in a way that you are able to do it by telling a story that's inspiring and consistent with where you want to go.
Certainly, that is definitely inspiring. I know a lot of people at UCLA especially are interested in product management, which is kind of this new burgeoning field, and consulting, including myself, actually. I know something that I definitely wanted to talk about with you was kind of surrounding the culture at UCLA, which is, compared to a lot of other universities like Stanford, like Berkeley, like USC, especially in the undergraduate programs, a lot of people at UCLA kind of have this inkling to lean towards the corporate world, to get a job at a safe, larger corporation as a software engineer or product manager, etc. What advice would you have for college students who are kind of balancing this decision, who are learning about startups, seeing that as a potential field to create their own company or work at a startup versus that corporate role straight out of college?
Yeah. So the thing is that you can get best of both worlds in the sense that you can look for opportunities where I wouldn't differentiate between startups and corporate world, but the way I would differentiate is maximizing for learning opportunities. Where can you maximize your learning? For example, working at Google in some areas might maximize your opportunity as compared to working, let's say, in a very small startup, depending on what profile that you have. Second thing is, because of the way funding is working, there are tons of amazing startups which are 1,000+ people, right? 1,000 or even like 2,000+ people, which are almost behave like a larger company, providing that structure, processes, and stability. But at the same time, they still have innovation, a lot of innovation going on because of the areas they are in. They might be in healthcare, they might be in financial space, they might be in mobility, they might be in electrical vehicle. So the second aspect of it is not so much corporate or startup, but where is innovation happening? Where would you learn the most? For example, I stuck around at Oracle for 6 years, which is unusual for me to be there at for such a long time. As I said, that I move quickly if I find my learning is stopped. The reason was anything that I wanted to do in enterprise, I could pretty much do at Oracle, and they were number one in it. So there was no motivation for me to just drop what I was doing and go and build that thing outside, because Oracle was also already doing that thing in enterprise, and they were bringing the latest and greatest technology, and there was innovation. Uh, all the go-to-market tools were amazing. The learning was amazing. Uh, so again, my advice to you is find great managers or bosses that you can work with, the team that you're working with. Find the companies that are known for great culture and great innovation. It matters a lot. In the early days, the things that you learn will really establish your foundation in terms of and also propel your career. For example, again, I'll give you a second example. eBay is a breeding ground for startups. At least till a few years back, it was absolute breeding ground for startups. That really helps, because when I went out and started my own company, there were already so many founders and so many people in VCs who actually opened up and supported me. And I do the same for people from eBay. So being part of companies that built this kind of innovation and alumni is also some of the things that you should watch for and try to optimize for that, I would say.
Certainly. So it sounds like the insight is more so, it's less about choosing between the startup versus corporate world and more about choosing an area that you can grow in and learn from and obviously develop your career.
And whether a company is like a 25 people company or 1,000 people company or a 5,000 people company is a personal preference. Absolutely a personal preference. And brand name matters when you're younger. Like if you want to go in consulting, being in top 4, or if you are looking for strategic consulting from Bain or BCG, all those brand names really matters in the early years. And those are also amazing companies to learn from, because they have been doing that structured way of teaching, and they have the program how to onboard college students, how to train them, how to put them in an assignment. So that if that's important to you, that is certainly a thing to look out for. But I was giving you an idea, like companies like, for example, I'm not vouching for, but for example, Stripe is a company. It's a startup, but it is actually a very large startup. Today, it has like more than 2,000 people working there. So you can find, if corporate culture appeals to you, you can find companies that still behave like startup, but which are larger. Again, this second final part to this is that learning in startup is very accelerated. The path is not linear. So if you are interested in exponential path, then I would say the startups are the best places to work, because there are no set path or set rules defined in terms of going from one level to the another. You can very quickly rise based on the situation there.
All right. I do want to get to audience questions. We do have a couple rolling in here. There is one that is anonymous, so I'll read it out for you. This person asks, what kind of challenges did you face in balancing the weight of family versus work, especially after you created your startup, and how did you handle these challenges?
So I built the company because I was facing challenges of managing my family and my personal life. And the biggest challenge for me was to pick up and drop off the children while you're still at work. I did not want to be one of those people where you have to pack everything and run at 4 o'clock and be very distracted about it. It just, and I used to see the impact on career of other people, at least at that time, of doing that. So my thing was, why would the parents be penalized for doing it, and why can't there be something like this? Definitely Zoom. I use Zoom personally for my children. They used to use 4 times every single day. Definitely helped me out in the journey of the startup. I'm also very disciplined, and I keep a very simplified life and very clear life, in the sense I have a very clear plan of what are the things that need to happen. I try to automate or outsource or hire people around me or resources around me that can help me without any shame about it. That's how I'm able to keep a very sane life towards it. Um, and I only devote my time on things that I'm best suited for. So that is one thing. And second thing is, there is such a big merger of personal and professional life that there are no clear boundaries anymore. So for me, instead of looking for work-life balance, I've always looked, how can I integrate my work life? I try to involve my family in a way that they get inspired and they are very excited, and my children are very excited about it. They themselves tell me, hey, there is this program happening in the school, but mom, I don't think it's worth your time. I think we'll do it on our own. Don't worry about it. So by by getting them enthusiastic about it, I've been able to integrate my work and personal life here.
All right. Yeah, so we just changed up the viewing, so hopefully people can start seeing each other. We do have another question from Aiden. Aiden, would you like to ask to unmute yourself and ask it? Do we have Aiden?
Yeah, sorry, the permissions were off. Hi, how are you doing?
Great, Aiden.
All right, cool. So my question is, how do you feel that your time at business school benefited you in the real world and in your startup?
Great question. For me, for transition, it was really helpful because I was looking to make a drastic transition. I had worked in the corporate world for over a decade, and I was looking to very quickly come up with all the tools, all the connection, my comfort level for personally transition. So that gave me a time to reflect back on and essentially interact with different people, learn about design thinking, learn about other areas in a very short amount of time. It was almost like I was learning whatever is the latest and greatest in terms of building startups and the network around it. But at the same time, I have to say that you don't have to go to business school to do a startup at all. In today's internet world, like after I've graduated for the past 7 years when I'm doing startup, there has been such an amazing transformation in terms of what you can learn in the internet. You can build communities around you. on Twitter, you can take cohort-based courses from the best possible people in the area you're interested in and build a network around it. So you don't really need to go to formal business school to get that kind of network that people used to rely on. Now, actually, anywhere in the world, you can build that network using the social media tools and cohorts and cohort-based learning courses or other mechanism. And if you really have an idea, I definitely think that business degree is not something that you absolutely have to do. But if you feel a need to do that, it's still very, very rewarding. At least as long as you know why you're going there. For me, the reason was very clear. I had to go there and I had to make use of this time to transition very drastically and learn all the tools very quickly, build a network and come out of it. It did help me in the fundraising situation also, because that specific network translated there in terms of meeting people and other people.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Aiden. We have another question from the audience from Daniel. Daniel, if you mind asking to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I clicked it too fast. So some of us are a bit older, non-traditional students. And so for students who are in their late 20s or even older, do you still feel that startups are a viable route?
Absolutely. So just to give you an idea, I didn't go to Stanford and Berkeley. I didn't actually continue in the program at Stanford when after graduating from undergrad. And I went back later in life when I had 2 children. So learning in today's age, there is no age limit. And in the college, somehow we get this idea that there is an age limit. You do this thing by this age and you graduate from school and you graduate from college and then you do this. There is no straight line. You late 20s that you're talking about is early for startups in terms of doing any kind of startup, either joining or starting of your own. In fact, they say that the median age of a very successful entrepreneur is 40 plus. I mean, I don't mean to say that to disappoint, but what I mean is it takes a few times to iterate on and become really good at something. It takes at least a decade. Then overnight you see a success of some platform. Those people have been working for over 10 years. And suddenly one night it feels like, oh my God, they're so successful. So absolutely, I would highly encourage not to take age as a limit for anything. And there are 2 particular reasons I would tell you, especially in today's world. One is that the life expectancy is increasing drastically. People are going to have multiple generations of technology in their lifetime. There is not going to be that, okay, we study for 20, 25 years and after that we don't do anything. The learning will continue. Even when you graduate from college, it will continue to happen. You will continue to learn through different tools. And second thing is pandemic has really disrupting education in a big, big way. People are realizing how anyone can learn anywhere remotely, and people need different kind of skill sets, even when they are working and even when they are at any stage of life. Because of that, there are so many tools that are coming up just to address that. So again, startups you can do at any age. Please don't compare yourself against younger people or older people or feel like you are in certain bucket. There are no buckets. You can, in fact, nobody asks for age when you go in startups. It's mainly by a network and mainly by a skill set and passion. So I have hired hundreds of people in my startup. We don't go by age. We don't even know. It's by the passion. People bring in the passion and they come in saying that, my God, this mission is so amazing. We would like to be part of it. And then that becomes a connector. That becomes like, once you're connecting with purpose and mission, then you for sure will do whatever it takes to make it successful. So just find your mission, which startups inspire you, and just go and tell them why you want to work with them. So age is not a limit at all, both on the younger side and the older side. Even if you're young and you want to do something, age is not a limit. And same with the older side, age is not a limit to do anything.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Daniel, for that question. I think we have an anonymous question, which I'll read out loud as well. So when you went through the process of building your startup, how did you manage when you had to make tough decisions? Did you rely on your intuition, turn to books for wisdom, talk to advisors?
Yeah, so one of the biggest skills that you can develop as a founder, as a professional, as a leader is decision making. So this is a really great question. Lately, I've started, since the beginning of this year, I've really started writing down, like every day I'm writing one essay of my journey in last 7 years. And I am just actually reflecting on a lot of questions, like especially around decision making that you're asking. Um, Decision making is actually a combination of both intuition and data. And I fundamentally classify decisions in the two categories. One, decisions are which are slow and very deliberate decision, because these are almost one-way decisions. You can't go back on those decisions very easily. And the other types of decisions are two-way decisions. For example, what do you want to eat for today? What kind of catering do you should have? What kind of broadband you should have for your company? Like all of these decisions, lots of administrative and other decisions are in a way that it's okay. Even if you make an error, that's fine. If you don't like something, you can change it, right? And I don't spend a lot of time making those decisions. Ideally, I try to find people who love making those decisions and outsource them, or I just make them quickly. But there are decisions which are slow, and for example, pivoting your product or deciding a specific direction of your product or deciding to go in a new territory for your product, launching in a new geography. All of these require very thoughtful, even if you have an intuition, this is going to be great. You have to do more research and back it up, back up your intuition that you have developed with the actual data to make sure you're not making any mistakes there. And the third thing I've learned about decision making is transparency really helps. Uh, like I actually have gotten into the habit of journaling and writing, and I write down and I look at all pros and cons and look at things analytically, look at things emotionally, what I don't like about it, what I like about it, and then I'm able to articulate it to other people around me really well. These could be your colleagues, this could be your leadership team, this could be your advisors, your board members, and then get very constructive input into it. As anytime you feel like you're hiding or you feel like you don't want to share, there is something there. So explore it. What is it that you don't want to share? Is the decision going to be right when that's happening to you? And build your own framework, own mental model of making decision, and try to write it down and see, and over the time refine it. Like, where did I go right? Where were the decisions good? Where did I not do so right? What was missing in that part when I didn't make the decision so right? And you will keep getting better and better at decision making.
Excellent. Well, I actually have one final question as we wrap things up in preparation for the next speaker. Something that I always like to do, or something I like to ask great leaders and founders such as yourself is, do you have like any recommendations or any like books, articles, podcasts, or something that, you know, has influenced you a lot in your career and becoming a better leader and founder?
I actually read a lot. Usually have like 2 to 3 books simultaneously on Kindle, and I don't read all the books full. If I don't like them, or if I get what I need to get in a couple of chapters, then I move on. I have also started reading summary on short form to see if this is some book that I would want to read fully. But there are few books for some reason you keep coming back to. And I think that's what you're asking me about. Like, are there the books that you keep coming back to? I would say 0 to 1, written by Peter Thiel, is pretty amazing book. Even though it may seem like it addresses startup, but it gives you a structure to evaluate how the industry overall works and why monopolies work and why different industries work is a pretty good book. The second book that I would highly recommend, which almost have any question that you have in personal life or your professional life answered, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It will just change your life in a way, like you can keep coming back to it and keep refining what you're working on, whether it's startup, whether it's your personal life, whether your habits in any way. Those two are very good books. You can also subscribe to a lot of newsletters nowadays, like Substack and other places. And I have, over the years, refined that really, like I'm very particular about what I'm consuming. So again, you can start with James Clear's newsletter. He sends out every Monday, and it's very simple to read, like very easy to read, and go from there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Ritu. I can speak for this entire Zoom call and the audience that we greatly appreciate you sharing your insights and giving us your time for this past hour. So thank you so much for coming, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Really enjoyed being here. And again, your questions were so thoughtful. I hope it was useful, and I'm sure you guys will do wonders, and my path will cross with you, many of you. Feel free to invite me on LinkedIn if you would like to answer further questions. I'm happy to stay connected.
Excellent.
Bye.
Thank you. We will move the spotlight. And I will also introduce our next moderator, which will be Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again to Ritu for all the amazing insights. And our next speaker is going to be Miriam Rufugaran from Movandi. But before we begin, I just want to reiterate quickly that how this is going to work is we're going to start off with a couple of our own questions. And throughout the Q&A, if you have any questions, feel free to drop your link on the Slido. The link is on the tiny URL at the bottom of the slide. And then we will move on to those questions more toward the end of the Q&A. So without further ado, I want to start off by introducing Miriam. Can you share a quick overview of your background and your past experiences?
Hi, Bonnie. Thank you. Yeah, this is my name is Miriam Rufugaran, and I'm actually a graduate all the way bachelor's, master's, dropout, PhD from UCLA. And from electrical engineering, I graduated, I think I got my master's in 1995, and then started my PhD. But while doing my PhD, working on my thesis and research, me and my brother was actually leading the whole project for his PhD. We realized the opportunity that what we could build, or what the difference we can make with what we had learned and the knowledge we had learned from our research throughout this whole process of working on the RF CMOS integration at UCLA. We could actually make a big impact. So we decided to come out, and he finished his PhD. I was still doing my PhD. We came out and started a company called Innovent Systems, and that was end of 1998. So we built the company, and we basically developed the first RF CMOS Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and a year and a half later, we got acquired by Broadcom, which, by the way, Henry Samuel Lee, the founder of the company, was actually one of our professors back at UCLA, and involved somewhat with the project we were actually doing at UCLA too. So we started that company. We sold the company in a year and a half to Broadcom, and then we stayed with Broadcom for almost 16 years, and built the wireless business at Broadcom, and then we kept adding more and more. And by the time that we left Broadcom, we were shipping almost more than billions of radios per year, and they're generating revenues of $3 billion per year. And we built the team. We helped the company to get to the level that they can continue in that business. After the acquisition of Broadcom, we came out and started a new company in 2016, and this company is called Movandi. And at Movandi now we're actually trying to address the challenges with the next generation of cellular 5G, especially in the higher spectrum, which is in the millimeter wave band. So that's my background.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that you are a triple Bruin, and we really do appreciate you coming back and supporting the community. So yeah, my next question is, what are some differences you've noticed between working at a bigger tech company like Broadcom versus starting a startup from scratch?
I mean, you know, each one of these cases, whether you work in a startup or you work in a big company, they have their own positive and negatives, and it really, really depends on your personality and someone's attitude and you know, what kind of personality they have. For people just like me who actually, you know, I always enjoyed being able to have a vision and go after it and really try to follow through it without being forced one way or another, because you know, you can't, if you want to be your own kind of person and you want to be able to make your own decision and follow through your vision, startups are really great, because that's where you know, even if you're not the founder, you're part of the team, because it's a smaller group. You're always in, you know, sort of part of the decision making, and you know, good founders always bring a team together that they can all work together. And so in that terms, whether you're the founder or whether you're actually someone who works for the startup, I think you get the opportunity to be able to be more involved with every aspect of, whether it's, you know, on the business side as well as technology side. I'm not saying that, you know, you're going to start going and doing all the marketing and stuff, but the nature of smaller companies, because there are not so many resources and because you have to do everything that almost big companies do, but it's a lot more limited with resources. So if someone is really motivated, the door is much more open for them to get into different things, learn a lot faster, and accelerate their path through their career. And you know, whether they want to go and build another company on their own, or they want to go and work in a bigger company, they can all of a sudden jump levels before they go to a bigger company and become managers, etc. And they learn a lot more too, as I mentioned, you know, both technically as well as business side. Bigger companies, they are more structured. So for people who need that structure, and they have to have more organization, and that helps them, then I think big companies are great, because you know your space, you know what to work on all the time. You may be smaller portion, but you know, you have more peace of mind that you're not being, you know, kind of pulled in different directions, and you don't feel like I have to contribute so much. So again, it depends what kind of personality you have and what kind of ambitions you have. For me, again, because I had fun, you know, even bigger company for me was good, but only because when we actually got to that bigger company, which was Broadcom itself was still a growing startup. And it wasn't like, you know, Intel or Qualcomm or somewhere that you get in and then, you know, everything is just so structured and everything is in place. So we had room to grow, and that's why we were able to actually grow our business from zero to much, you know, bigger business inside Broadcom. It is still different, because sometimes you feel like, you know, you have so much resistance on things that you want to do, and you have to go through multiple levels to get approvals for little things. And there are more politics involved, so you have to be knowing, you know, who you're dealing with and how you can work with this guy differently from that guy. So there are differences, but again, you know, it depends on the personality of people, and each one can bring their own negative and positive into the picture.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely both sides to the story. And then you mentioned earlier that prior to joining Broadcom, you worked on a startup called Innovate Systems. I was wondering, what lessons did you learn from that first startup that you went on and took with you to Broadcom and then now Movandi?
That was a great learning process for me, because that was our first startup, and pretty much, even though I was doing consulting and some work outside, it was, the very first actual work full-time that I was doing. And we had to go through the process of raising money. We had to go through the process of building a team. And we were much younger, right? At that point, especially for me, I was much younger, and I was also a woman in this field. So, for me, it was somewhat more challenging, because even when I was having the full confidence at that level, initially for me it was harder to sit for, we have all these customers who are all, none of them were women, and trying to explain stuff, and some of them would not even look at me, because, I felt like, they were thinking, this is probably not even your place, kind of. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying everyone, but then, going through that process and pushing myself to actually build the confidence, and this kind of becoming insensitive to some of these actions, and trying to focusing mainly on making the company successful. And that was my own target, no matter what. So it really helped me to build my confidence, and it really helped me to learn more about business, because we also, that was our first time, and we did have a CEO, but our CEO was also, he didn't have any experience at that point. So we kind of had to start doing everything, all the way from, business, building the business, marketing, talking to the customer, doing the design, so pretty much everything. And that helped me a lot to learn a lot of stuff before we sold our company and negotiated our deal and became Broadcom. And then going through Broadcom, it helped me again, because, within Broadcom, it was a much bigger company, and we had to work with others and build and keep our company alive and going, our startup going within that company. So I learned a lot through that whole process. So when we started Mobandi, I think that was a really, really, plus, I would say, because it was our second time, but at the same time, we had gone through a lot of stuff, and we had learned a lot, and we had built a lot of credibility. So it was easier to start that.
Great. And I also wanted to hit on one point that you mentioned about diversity. The tech industry is known for being pretty male dominated. So as a minority in tech yourself, what do you think could be done to increase the diversity in the field?
I think there are two different stages for that, right? The very first stage is encouraging and exposing our younger girls to basically to engineering and the interesting things about engineering, how fun that could be, because I can tell you a lot of girls don't even know what engineering is and what kind of work that is, right? So the first thing is trying to actually teach or somehow expose the girls to that, and make sure that they don't feel like this is a nerdy thing. The second thing is that, for the girls who have actually gone to the field of engineering and they go to the university, to make sure that they stay engaged and they stay interested, because I've seen many girls who actually start going through the university and they end up changing fields, or even if they go to the industry after that because they don't feel comfortable because of environment or the kind of work they're doing, they switch or they completely go to a different business. So that's one of the things that we have been working on with the GSA, Global Semiconductor Alliance, where I'm actually one of the committee member, and there are very very powerful women on that committee with me, and we're all, which Jody Shelton is actually leading it. So our focus is working with all these big semiconductor companies and others, not just semiconductor. And we're trying, they've been doing an excellent job trying to set up a lot of initiations. Some of them are actually involving UCLA, there are others with other universities. and we're trying to bring awareness to all these companies, and then we have been working with these companies to try to set up more internship for specifically for women and females, so that they get more opportunity while they're at universities, so they can start doing some work, an internship, and see what they like, if they like it. And encouraging the managements in the semiconductor companies to bring more women into the company, and also trying to make sure that managers are more encouraging, and they basically, there's not a whole lot of this whole bias against women gets a little bit less. Although not everyone is like that, and I can tell you I've worked with many men who are leaders, and they've been very supportive, and they've been excellent working with. But again, generally speaking, there are scenarios that women are not encouraged, or they're not provided with what they need to succeed or accelerate in their work, and those are the kind of stuff that we're working on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for everything you're doing to increase diversity in the field. I just have one last question before we move on to audience questions. You filed over 295 patents over the course of your career, which is super impressive. How do you keep all of these fresh ideas coming? And what would you say is the role of innovation in creating a successful startup?
Okay, so let me start with the innovation, because that's part of what brings patents, etc. to picture, right? And by innovation, I don't mean invention necessarily, right? Startups don't have to be all going and trying to do what, for example, I don't know, Edison did with the fundamental bringing electricity, or Newton invented, none of those. But it's the new ways of addressing challenges, right? So it could be actually building upon some of the initial inventions that have happened in the past. But when you're a startup and you have some kind of vision and some ideas, then you really have to make sure you're differentiated, right? If you start something and you're just a me too to everybody else out there, your chance of success is not that high, because why would anyone want to go and work with somebody else or become a customer of a company that is just like anyone else? So you have to bring some new ideas in, and these ideas don't have to be necessarily technical. It could be the way of how you market your products. It could be the way that your business operates, and I can give you an example. For example, what let's say what Steve Jobs did, it was not going and inventing something. It was innovation, because he really came up with the idea of how putting something really nice looking and something simple like cell phone, which existed before. It was not, it's not that BlackBerry didn't exist before. It's not that, but he knew how to market that thing, right? And there are some other cases where you actually have, some completely new idea, which is completely invention. But at the end of the day, you don't have to have real invention that's fundamentally new. It's but you do have to have some new ideas that differentiates you from other startups. And when you go and when you actually form a company and you go and start pitching it and trying to raise money, one of the first things that everyone wants to know is that, okay, yeah, what is it that makes you unique? Why do you think you have differentiation? Which all goes back to innovation. So innovation is very important all the way from beginning to the end, and whether it's technical, how you address the challenge, or whether it's the way that you go get market and customers, you have to have something. And once you have that, then along the way, all these patents and things have to be basically protected, and that's why you come up with patents and you put them, in place to make sure that your innovations and what you're doing also gets protected. That's basically why innovation is important and why you actually end up having patents.
Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying the difference between innovation and invention. We do have an anonymous question from the audience. What are the key differences in starting up in the hardware industry versus the software industry? And is there a higher entrance cost to entering the hardware industry?
I would say definitely yes. It depends on what kind of software you're doing and what kind of, but generally speaking, especially now, and maybe 20 years ago it wasn't as bad, but especially now, if you're trying to start a hardware business, which you would want to go and build chips, that means that you have to actually go and pay a lot of money for the mask making, etc., because the new processes that have gone to from 1 micron now to going to 7 nanometer, these are getting more and more expensive. So depending on what you're doing in hardware and depending on what kind of process node you need, and how much you're doing, and whether that also requires a whole lot of software stack that again brings a lot more resources needed, it could be very costly. So the barrier, and when you go and talk to basically VCs trying to do something in hardware versus something in social media or something that's purely focused on software, I would say it's much harder to basically get the money because they're going to think that you're going to need hundreds of millions of dollars to basically become successful. Having said that, I think things have been actually getting much better over the last couple of years for semiconductor companies, because now semiconductor is actually becoming hot again, and with all this new AI and 5G and everything that's happening, and realizing that to support this you really need advanced hardware now. So the demand for semiconductor and chips have gone up, and you see this supply chain issue that has been all over the news now, and the fact that China is pouring money into semiconductor now because of the situation they're in with this sanction, and realizing they really have to bring up their capability. It's creating this momentum that hardware has become again more interesting. But then again, there's no question that cost of starting something in hardware is, especially in the beginning, much more than software is true. It's usually the case.
Yeah, that's definitely a trend I've also been noticing over the years. And then our next question is, where do you see the mobile and wireless industries going in the next 10 years?
Well, all I would say is that as it is, wireless has become part of your life. I mean, look at it. Do you see yourself without your phone for like a minute or a second? I can't get my kids off at that. So unfortunately, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but the more we go, and with all these new standards and all these new initiatives that are coming, I can tell you it's wireless is becoming even more and more important into people's lives, and it's getting a lot more embedded. In some cases, maybe you don't even notice, but look at all these sensors and all the IoT applications that now actually, IoT has been in discussions for so many years, but it's never been to this level that with now it's actually starting to happen in much more kind of acceleration, and they're going into a lot of devices, and I can see that one day, I mean, all these things that you hear, your milk basically is going to send an email from your refrigerator, sending a note to your device, and your device is going to send at the supermarket, I'm out, send me mail. All these things are reality that could happen and will happen. It's a matter of time. Your car is going to be so smart that you should have no worry. Actually, I would say at one point, because of all this whole 5G and everything that's going to happen with no latency, and having a brain somewhere in the center where all this data gets collected from the car, and there could be a very quick decision, so and then information where you can get all, should I go this route, that route, some traffic is happening somewhere. It becomes so embedded in the life that without it, it will be, if something happens and it's not there, you realize, well, what am I going to do? but I think it's just the beginning of wireless to become even more and more important in lives.
Yeah, definitely. It's here to stay for sure, and it's infiltrated a lot of parts of our lives. It should be exciting to see where it goes in the next few years.
Yep, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, we have another anonymous question. What is an essential skill or set of skills needed to make a startup in the tech industry succeed? And what is the best skill that you have used or developed?
It's not just one skill, but I would say, first of all, you definitely have to be knowledgeable in the field if you're the founder of the company, right? But I think it's very important to be able to work with the team, basically found the right partners. That's very, very important, because you're going to have to be working with them day and night, and you have to have each other's support during bad times and good times. And then the team that you basically attract and bring to the company, it's not that they only have to be very smart. You actually want them to be a team working together. It's more important for them to be able to work together than being geniuses, all of them. I mean, you need people who are team players, people who are motivated, and they really want to be doing more than just sitting and doing one block design. Or so I think, and then communication skill, all those things matter. But more than anything else, I would say being able to work as a team and attract strong team players is really important.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think we have time for one more question. As a triple Bruin yourself, you know what it's like to be in the shoes of UCLA students. What piece of advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time?
I would just say, UCLA, remember, UCLA is one of the best universities out there. I actually I got accepted to Berkeley, to many other universities, and I decided to go to UCLA at that point of time, mainly because my brother was here. Not because, I was actually excited to go to Berkeley, but, what I realized is that UCLA has a more balance of, being able to do many things. And I think being at UCLA, it really helped me with building my confidence. So one thing that you want to do, the first thing is that take advantage of the greatness of UCLA, learn as much as you can, try to be learning a lot, and at the same time, be confident. And UCLA again is one of the best universities out there, especially in this field of engineering. And you would have a lot of opportunities, whether you want to go build your own company and start a company, or you want to go work for big companies. You should be confident that I mean, I can tell you at Broadcom, I was looking always for students from UCLA when we were hiring, even at our startups. So you should be proud of that and be confident that whatever you want to do, if you really want to do it, you should go and pursue it, and don't be intimidated, or don't let anything telling you that I can't do this or not. You should definitely go after what you like.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you so much for sharing. And I guess that kind of wraps up our Q&A for today. I'd like to pass it on to our next moderator, William. But before that, I just want to say thank you so much, Miriam, for taking your time to come up here and share your experiences with us. We all learned a lot. So virtual clap. Thank you, Miriam.
Thanks.
All right, and I'll pass it off to William.
Cool. Thanks, Bonnie. Ritu, did you want to put that? Awesome. All right. So last but certainly not least, we have Adam Chyer, who is the co-founder of Siri, Viv Labs, among other companies. And I actually personally had the opportunity to meet him a couple of years ago at a different UCLA event. And I just loved hearing him speak about his experiences with these different startups. So we're really fortunate to have him back today for Founders Fireside. So I believe Adam has prepared a keynote. So if you have slides, you can feel free to screen share. You're a co-host. So.
I'm actually just going to talk. I thought it would be more fun to just to give you a little bit of my story and maybe throw a few lessons in there for the entrepreneurs out there. and then open it up to Q&A. So no slides. I'm too tired of, I spend days all day long looking at Zoom and slides. So I thought I would do it a different way today.
Sounds good.
So thanks, William. First of all, I know it's great to be back with both UCLA students and also people from the ACM, I believe, are involved in this. I wanted to start out and say I wouldn't be where I am today without both UCLA and ACM. ACM got to me first. So this is how I actually got started in computer science. I was in high school. It was a long time ago because I'm pretty old. In fact, computers, the year that I was there as I think a sophomore, was the first year our high school had computers on campus. And I knew nothing about them. I walked up to them, tried to turn them on. Nothing happened. I didn't know you needed a bootable floppy disk to stick into it when you turned it on. Didn't have one of those. So it was a very mysterious thing. But on the the PA, they announced people who would like to join, we're going to be having the computer club meet after school. And I'm like, wow, computers, could be cool. I don't know what they are, but I'm going to go join the computer club. And I went, and when I got there, they said, oh, sorry, you can't join. This is not a computer club, it's a computer team. We compete. There's the Association for Computing Machinery that each week they send us 6 problems to solve. You have 30 minutes to write a program that will take 6 different inputs, perform calculations, and spit out the right outputs. You get 1 point for each correct, and the top 5 people from each school form the team, and they submit nationally. But since you don't know computers, you can't join. And if there's one thing to learn about me, if you tell me I can't do something, that's going to get my dander up. And so I started literally stealing the questions for the weekly tests out of the trash basket and thrown away printouts of, usually not working computer programs that people had printed out and, drafts. And I was just trying to figure out all of this. And then by the end of the, 3 weeks later or so, I came back and said, okay, I want to try your silly test. And, took it and wrote programs. And by the end of the year, I was 4th best in the school. We won the state championships in Massachusetts that year. I was, it was telling me I couldn't do it. And then trying to compete and keep up with, the seniors, the top 3 students in our school. We had the #1 rated programmer in the entire country. The top 3 all graduated and went to MIT at that time. I was just a sophomore and trying to hang. But that tells you a little bit about me. Tell me I can't do something, and I'm going to go after it. The second thing I want to tell you about myself is, back in those same days, right around high school, I wanted to grow up and be a magician. And so why am I telling you this? Really, there's 2 aspects about magic and magicians that are important in my story. One is, first thing is I'm a skeptic, right? I know magicians fool people. It's not real. And if I hear like a motivational speaker or, a self-help guru or sometimes even a teacher, and they get up and try to tell me how to live my life or how to be an entrepreneur, how to do anything, right away, my skeptic signal goes up and I'm like, who's this guy? I'm not believing it. He's trying to fool people. So I'm going to keep telling you some of my stories, but if you hear me say that this is what I did, and this is something that worked for me, don't take it as this is what I want you to do. Take it as, okay, maybe that's interesting, but you really need to figure out your own way, your own path to be an entrepreneur. And some things I've tried, I would not recommend for anyone. You'll hear a little bit about that, but find your own way. That's the most important thing. Don't follow a talking head who's telling you what to do. The second thing about magic that was so important to me is I realized through magic that anything is possible. So magicians and entrepreneurs, it turns out, both need to imagine an impossible future, something that doesn't exist, and then work backwards from there. So magicians will figure out the math and the science to bend the laws of physics if needed, right? You can do anything in magic. So float in the air while jumping rope at the same time, you know, it's been done. Teleport from one place to another. I've seen that on a Broadway magic stage. So that idea that you can imagine anything and then make it happen is so fundamental for me about what an entrepreneur does. No entrepreneur is going to start a company to create something that exists already, because the company that's there has got more resources than you. They have customers. They're going to win. An entrepreneur has to imagine a desirable and impossible future, and then work out the math and science to make that come true. As Arthur C. Clarke says, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to venture a little ways past them into the impossible, right? And that's what entrepreneurs do every day. If you think of Siri, 20 years ago, the idea you'd have a device in your pocket that you could pull out and it would know who you are and where you are, and you could just talk to it and it would do things for you. It would book reservations and answer questions. And it would do this by speaking, purely through voice. That would have been a magic trick for anyone. So let me give you one tip, one story, one tool. So as you're imagining an impossible future and you're committing towards making this come true, one thing that I do is I literally visualize what would success mean. I picture it concretely in my mind. So as an example, when I co-founded Siri, it was about 2007 with my colleagues, Doug Kitlaus, Tom Gruber. We were just a handful of guys and girls working on this crazy dream, competing against Google and all of the biggest companies in the world. And it seemed impossible that we could succeed. So one day I walked into an Apple store and I saw on the wall of an Apple store all of these icons, the logos of the most successful companies of the time. There was Facebook, there was Skype, there was Pandora, there was Google, and many more. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know how, but someday Siri, the Siri logo is going to be right there on an Apple store wall next to the most biggest and successful companies in the world. It seemed crazy. It was the biggest, craziest, most ambitious dream that I could imagine. So now you fast forward a couple of years, and about 4 years, and Siri is launching on the iPhone 4S. And so of course I had to go to an Apple store, go to the local Apple store to see, are people trying it? Do they like it? What's their experience? What's the scene like? And as I approach that same Apple store, I walk up and there's the front door. And right next to the front door was a plasma display set up to look like an iPhone. And it was running Siri use cases on a loop. And above it was a sign that said, introducing Siri. And this vision, this image, especially in juxtaposition of that, image that I had in my mind from a few years ago, it hit me like a sledgehammer, right? It was like this crazy, impossible dream. The biggest dream I could conjure up was this one logo out of 100 on an Apple store wall. And now we are the front door. It gave me chills. And it was as if life had reached out, almost like a joke, to like tweak your nose, say, remember when you were dreaming that? Well, how about this? And this has happened to me again and again in entrepreneurship and in life. So that's something fun to try as you go out on your entrepreneur journey. You can think about, try to visualize what would success look like? Visualize it as a picture. because you may come back a few years later and realize, boy, I didn't dream big enough. It's kind of crazy. So let me say a few words about how I ended up at that point where I had that success moment. To many people, Siri came out of the blue, right? Literally, we started the company at the end of 2007. We were about 20 people at our, we grew to about 20 people. We launched a free app in the App Store, right? It was one of, I think there were 2 or 3 million apps in the App Store. We were just one free app. And then, we launched it. We were excited. People are starting to like it. I still remember this one tweet someone wrote where they said, it's like someone came out of the future and said, here, you've got to try this out. And I'm like, yes, that's what we were going for. So we're all excited. About 2 weeks later, on our iPhone, we get this call, and the caller ID said, Apple, Cupertino. And we're like, swipe, 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 answer, answer, answer. For some reason, there was a glitch. It wasn't answering for like 6, 7 swipes. We finally answer and we hear this voice. Hey, it's Steve. What you doing? Want to come over to my house tomorrow? And we're like, Steve Jobs is calling us? How did he get the phone number? Because I don't know if people know this, but one of the meanings for Siri is secret in Swahili. Siri means secret in Swahili. And we were very stealthy. Our website was literally stealth-company.com. We had no address and phone number. So we're like, how is Steve Jobs calling us? So anyway, we said yes. We went over to his house the next day. He made it clear he wanted to buy our company. We talked about the future, technology. We said, thank you. We're flattered. Not interested. Goodbye. And we left. But about a month later, he and Scott Forstall came back and they convinced us that we could change the world more with Apple than without. So we ended up selling to Apple. So it seems like every entrepreneur's dream. Launch an app, 2 weeks later, Steve Jobs calls you, boom, you're working at Apple, boom, you're now building a product that 1 billion people have now used over time, 1 billion users. It's incredible. But what most people don't realize is that that success wasn't quite instant and without failure. So my very first version of Siri was in 1993, before I ever saw a web browser. And I built literally a little iPad-like device that I could talk to, and I had handwriting recognition. And there were dynamic services that would connect, and they would bring not only new capabilities, but language to describe them. And I could talk to this assistant, it would delegate requests to the right services, and it would combine, I could use requests that would combine services together that didn't even know each other. So for me, Siri was really my version of the internet before I saw a web browser. I still think it's a compelling vision to this day. And a lot of the things that I needed to create that 1993 version, I learned at UCLA. My master's thesis was with Scott Parker and Alan Klinger, and I built the first screen reader to help visually impaired users on Microsoft Windows. So I had some experience with speech recognition and text-to-speech and things of that sort. And I took that out from my master's degree into the world and started this dream. And one last comment about UCLA, another thing that it taught me and that I learned was you need to challenge yourself to do more than you think you can. That's one of my phrases that I repeat often and try to apply in my life. So when I applied to UCLA, I was living in France. A master's usually was about 2 to 3, usually a 3-year program. I was out of state, out of country. I couldn't afford to spend 3 years. And so I applied to every school up and down the coast, including Stanford and Berkeley and UCLA and UC San Diego. And I said, I want to complete my master's in 9 months. That's all I can afford. One year, basically, 9 months, 3 quarters. And UCLA was the one that said they would let me try. And so I didn't know if I would get through it, but I said, I'm just going to pile up the classes. It was the same cost at the time. I'm going to attempt more than I think I can, and see how it goes. And it worked out. It worked out pretty well. So that's something I've also applied many, many times. When I started Siri, I didn't just start one company. Every entrepreneur, book and class will say you have to focus, focus, focus. Just do one thing. Well, I actually started 3 companies at the same time. So there's one of the examples, like, don't do what I did. I don't recommend it. But Siri was my day job. Sentient, which was a machine learning company, massively scalable machine learning company that's raised over $180 million in funding, was my night job. And then Change.org, the world's largest petition platform, it now has more than 425 million members, was kind of my night job, or one of the other projects that I had been working on and spun out into a company. So I'm very proud to have been I was the first developer there and founding member, but just an advisor as it grew to success. So, sometimes there are more than one way to do it. I found my own way. I did more than I thought I can, and it worked out okay anyway. So in conclusion, what I would leave you with is, challenge yourself, or take the challenge. If someone says you can't do it, go for it, try it, prove them wrong, and try to do more than you think you can. Give yourself challenges. If you reach for a far flag and you get only 80% there, it's often much more than you would accomplish just sitting back and taking the easy route and only aiming for 20%, what you really are possible. The only way to find what you're capable of is to stretch as far, even beyond where you think you can go. Next important lesson, find your passion, keep pursuing it, perhaps over decades, as in my case. Siri, I just thought it would be interesting. I'm still not there. I started Viv Labs to continue this journey, sold it to Samsung. We now power hundreds of millions of devices on Samsung. I left last July after almost 8 years working on Viv Labs and Samsung. So I'm still, yearning for the Siri that I've always dreamed of to happen on a large scale. And then most importantly, actually, let me give you one more: visualize success. So imagine a picture of what success would look like, and then enjoy it, as life often will help you succeed and exceed your biggest dreams and expectations. And then most importantly, don't listen too much to anyone who tells you how to live your life or be an entrepreneur or anything else. Be a skeptic, chart your own path, and do it your own way. So with that, that's my little introduction, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Adam. I guess I have a question that I wanted to start out with. I guess since you've started different startups, some of them are in like similar industries, like Siri and Viv Labs are both in the AI assistance field. And then you've also had like ones in completely different areas, like Change.org, petitions, and creating change in the world. But what do you think are some lessons that you learned from some of the previous ones that you did that translate across industry and are just more universally applicable, I guess, to startups that way?
Yeah. So for me, I've been lucky enough to do many different things. I started out as a researcher after UCLA. My first job was at SRI International. I have interests, and I've had many chapters in my life, as everyone does, right? Life is like a book, and your job is you get to be a co-author. You get to write each chapter and dream what you want it to be, and then life or destiny is the other co-author. But chapters, a good book, a good story will have arcs. And so I've had 2 threads in my career. I've had the Siri thread since 1993. That's 28 years, I think, and counting, where I've been learning and exploring, and this idea of being able to interact through multiple interfaces to empower a user to achieve tasks more quickly. That's exciting to me. and my 1993 version, my 2007 version. You can actually go find on the web, if you type Siri Back to the Future. I have a video where I will actually show something like, I don't show all of them, but I will show assistants I've built in 2011, 2010, 2007, 2003, 1999, 1993. And as you go further back in time, each one gets more futuristic in some dimensions. So it's given me satisfaction to try different things, explore things, and learn things towards a purpose, towards a big goal. So that's something a lesson I think I would give to everyone. The second career path was, my mentor was a man named Doug Engelbart. He's the most important computer person, in my opinion. He was actually, UCLA is known for being the first on the ARPANET and on the internet. He was at SRI on the other side of that call from UCLA to SRI on that first ARPANET transmission. And then later on, his group members for the internet transmission. But he said, we need to try to augment human intellect through computers. He said, we're going to be faced with ever complex, important problems like pandemics, climate change, human rights, animal rights, hunger, poverty, sickness. And unless we get better at solving global problems, we will not survive as a species. So that was his quest. And along the way, he invented pretty much everything that we know as personal computing, the web, and collaboration. So at a time when he was, most of the world was using punch cards to literally paper with holes punched in them to input and output computers, he built the first text editors, so interactive typing. He has the patent for the mouse, the first multiple windows, first hyperlinks, multimedia documents, this video conferencing, just like we're doing now. But he could fade the face of the person behind the text that they were co-editing in real time, collaborative editing. So he built a lot of technology, but it was all to try to augment collective IQ of the world. And so for me, I've done project after project. Change.org is the most well-known in that sphere. But I guess the lesson is, find things that you care about and that you're interested in. Each one of the projects I worked on is wonderful and a success and a failure in its own right, but I learned from it. And it's having an arc, a thread over your career that gives some meaning and purpose. And when you read the book, the story of your life, you'll kind of understand it because you have a framework, a thread through which all of your chapters run. And that for me has been very fulfilling.
Cool. So we have an anonymous question here. I guess they ask, what is an essential skill or set of skills needed to make a startup in the tech industry succeed? And what is the best skill that you've developed?
Sure. So I say there are 4 skills required for every founding team. So there are really 3 things you need to become an entrepreneur, and then a 4th step to succeed. So the 3 things you need are, you need the right idea at the right time, and I can talk more about how you figure that out. You need the right skills, which is what this question is about, in your founding team. And then you need to take those 2 things and go raise money from an unbiased investor. And once you raise money saying, I've got the right idea at the right time and I have the right team to deliver it, then it's all about execution. So what are the 4 skills you need? You need, number 1, visionary. You need someone who sees the long, big picture. Why is this going to change everything eventually? And why is it important? And where does it go? Like, why are we doing this big thing? The second thing is, you need a marketeer. You need someone who can sell that vision to investors, to customers, to prospective employees. Often the visionary is not a great marketeer. Take Doug Engelbart. Why don't we know who he is, even though he basically invented all of computing, computer interfaces. He was a visionary, absolutely. He was decades ahead of his time, but he was not a marketeer. So you don't know who he is. People think Xerox PARC invented the mouse. I mean, it's just like so many falsehoods because he didn't get out his message. So visionary, marketeer, you need a product person who can translate the vision into concrete steps. First, we're doing this, then we're doing that, and here's why. Here's the roadmap of what we're doing. Like, we'll get to the big vision eventually, but we need to do this first and succeed at that, and then we need to do that second. And then the last is you need the builder, the person who says, okay, I get it. I see the roadmap. I will deliver this on time and on budget. So when you're an entrepreneur, you should figure out which one of the 4 skills, or which ones. You can be great. You can be world-class, maybe at more than one. Maybe you're a visionary and a marketeer. Maybe you're a builder and a product person. But in your founding team, I think you need all those 4 skills. And for me, at SRI, they kind of teach everybody everything. And the whole idea of being an independent researcher is you have to have the idea, you write the proposal, you sell the proposal to some customer, you then write the code, you deliver the final report, you publish the paper, and then you write the patents. It's kind of, they teach you how to do a little bit of everything. But I would say what I'm best at is I think I am pretty good at having a long-term vision, I have opinions about where the world will go and why, and what I think the world needs. I don't know if I'm right, but I've got opinions. And I'm pretty good at inspiring, especially for a tech audience, why this is going to be amazing and transformative. And so I would say the visionary plus marketeer, although, I also, and I inspire by building a prototype. I'm good at software prototypes. I'm not the best software engineer, but I can build something that I can show people, this is what the world's going to be like. This is the magic trick that we're all trying to make real. Now, let me hire a team to actually build a real one. Let me get a product person to help, take out an actual commercial version of this.
Well, so like you mentioned, I guess, since as a visionary, you have to have opinions about where the future is going to go and what the world needs and stuff. So we do have another anonymous question that is a little bit more specific and asks your opinion about something. The person asks, since you seem like a visionary, what do you think about Bitcoin/blockchain and its role in the coming years? Is it just hype or is it the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my process is, it's important to do the research and have opinions about things like that. If you really understand it better than everyone else, that gives you a superpower of being able to predict the future and where the world is going. When in 2004, it was the 10th anniversary of the web for me, and I literally took a month and made 10 predictions for the next 10 years of the web. Thought, 10 years in, let's make predictions. And some of those were good predictions, some of them were not. My best 3 predictions directly translated into companies. And you can go find a presentation I did around 2014, where I said a lot of prognosticators who tell you what the future is going to be, they only tell you the good one. I'm going to show you the presentation I did 10 years ago and score myself. And then I'll make 5 more predictions for the next 5 years, 2015 through 2020. So in terms of Bitcoin, I'm not that interested in it personally. I think it often is applied, Bitcoin and is often applied for applications that aren't so essential. I think it consumes a ton of resources. I think there are some big forces getting behind it. So I may be wrong and that it'll be absolutely the way all money goes and, cryptocurrencies, but I'm just not that interested in it. A lot of it seems like speculation to me, the reason people are excited about it. I'm not a gambler type, but I don't have predictions about Bitcoin. I haven't done the research. So I encourage people, if you think that's an interesting thing, go research it, make your predictions. I talk about trends and triggers. So my 2004 predictions, I predicted there would be a new user interface that would emerge. And when the iPhone came out, I know most people here won't remember this, but there was a lot of skepticism, and people said, oh, only a phone company can build something as complex as a phone. Apple's a music player company. It's going to fail. This is going to be a fad. When I saw the iPhone with its apps and pinch and zoom, I'm like, this is exactly what I predicted. This is going to be successful. Now, so that was, I had this prediction. And then there was a trigger point. The iPhone came out. And I said, because I've done the research and my belief is that it will, this is what I've been waiting for. I know it will succeed. So 2 years from now, every handset manufacturer, telco will be desperate to compete with Apple. So what will they need? Well, they'll need something that compensates for the flaws of the iPhone. The screen is small, the bandwidth is slow, it's hard to type. They need a Siri. So I started Siri at that moment because I knew where the industry was. I had a belief where the industry was going. I got a trigger point that confirmed this is what you've been waiting for. I then knew where the world would be 2 years from then, and I built something for those 2 years. And of course, the irony was I built it for Apple's competitors. Apple saw it first or acquired it first. So I would encourage people to have predictions, look around all of the technical aspects that could go either way that aren't determined, maybe augmented reality, maybe health, how's health going to evolve, a bunch of different things. I'm actually working on my next 7 predictions for the next 7 years, 2021. Not ready to reveal them yet here, but yeah, I think it's an incredible, useful tool for every entrepreneur is to make end predictions for the next 10 years and then look and watch for those trigger points when now you know it's time to go.
Awesome. The next question is from another anonymous attendee. It says, you're on the advisory board of one of the top AI research institutes, Allen AI. What are some of the most frequently discussed issues among different stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been there since the inception. I forget how old they are, maybe 7 or 8 years now or more, maybe 8. So Allen AI was funded by Paul Allen. He also did the Allen Institute for Brain Science. And so he's really passionate about trying to understand this miracle that is the human mind and figure out how do we do what we do and how can we do it better. So it's an incredibly interesting question. He was attacking it from multiple angles. And even though he passed away a year or 2 ago, both of those projects continue on. So today in AI, deep learning, deep neural nets are almost synonymous with AI. It's been different over the years. In the 80s, expert systems was synonymous with AI. In the 90s, intelligent agents were synonymous with AI. Now it's all about machine learning, neural net. It's not even machine learning. It's this tiny field in machine learning, neural nets, and not even all types of neural nets. It's this tiny field within that of deep neural nets. So I'd say Allen Institute is really interested in knowing, are neural networks sufficient for explaining and replicating all of the intelligence that humans have? Or is there something more that's needed? Humans are rational beings with common sense and this ability to extract a use case, like some lesson from one setting, and then apply it in a similar, conceptually similar, but very different setting. Every 2-year-old can do that trivially. Neural networks are not good at that, right? You take DeepMind, which is a company Google acquired, and their big breakthrough was literally an AI that played Breakout, that one of the Atari video games. But if you would change the lighting parameters by like 2%, a human couldn't even perceive any difference, but the entire program would just fall apart. Like it couldn't play anymore, right? That's not adapting to different environments. So Allen AI has been kind of wrestling with the successes that have been through deep learning and trying to complement it and really be a counterpoint that maybe there's something more. Although I would say it's funny, they've tried to outdo deep neural nets in many ways. So like one of the things they did is could we create a computer program that could take science tests and math tests at the level of an 8th grader, a 12th grader, et cetera. And what techniques and knowledge. I mean, there's so much about you see this just little image of a slope going down and a ball, and instantly we know what's going to happen because we parse the real world every day, and we know that a ball is going to fall down and it'll hit this thing and roll, and right. But a computer to figure all of that out, wow, it's not a neural network that will just, can be used because every problem is so different, they thought. But it turns out their biggest success is more, I would say, neural network inspired than the kind of good old-fashioned AI, logic, reasoning, search kinds of tasks. So they wrestle with it every day. I'd say that's one of the biggest topics there.
All right. One more question from the audience. You have in many ways achieved the visualization of success that you previously mentioned. So what's next for you? And do you still have the same far-reaching dreams as you did with your first project?
Yeah, one thing that every entrepreneur needs is dissatisfaction. It's probably the most important emotion. If you get comfortable and you're happy, like, wow, this incredible background, it's just a virtual background, right? Right. I wish I lived in a place like this, right? You have to kind of be dissatisfied because otherwise you don't want to go forward and change the world. And I'm good at being frustrated. Everyone says, wow, Siri, you must be so excited and happy to have done Siri. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm proud of what we did with Siri. We advance, user interface in a certain dimension and change people's expectations of what might be possible. But I'm so frustrated with it because it was like 1/1000th of what it was supposed to be, right? Frustrating. And when I couldn't pursue my dreams fully at Apple for various reasons, one was Steve Jobs died literally the day after Siri launched. And his admin wrote to me and said he was clinging to life to see the launch of Siri. After he died, not everyone understood the vision that he and I had discussed about where Siri should go. I couldn't pursue it at Apple, and so I left frustrated to start another company. And I left Samsung Viv after 8 years of just intense effort and work and passion to try to achieve what I wanted, which was something as important. I wanted a voice assistant to be as important as the web and important as mobile, and it's not. And I didn't think I'm going to get there, so I left, and it's frustrating to me. Yes, I'm happy I exited another company. I'm so proud of the tools and the developer platform that we gave out for free to thousands of developers. It's the most sophisticated AI platform available. Go to bixbydevelopers.com and see what I mean. But I'm frustrated it's not going to be what I wanted it to be. So I'm not going to sit back in my virtual apartment and be content. I have dreams. I'm still pursuing my 2 career threads. What's next to me? I'm dreaming of bringing the 2 threads together for the first time ever into a new project, a new company that both is focused on using AI and user interface to empower an individual, but also try to take on more of the collective intelligence challenge that Doug Engelbart gave for all of us here. And I would encourage you, I'd say, the world right now, it has never been more poignant how urgent it is that we need to wrestle with global problems, climate change, pandemics, et cetera. We don't have a lot of time left. We need more entrepreneurs to figure out how do we solve these issues. And Doug Engelbart's path was, well, I could try to solve any one specific issue, climate change or whatever, but there's a better return on investment if I decide, how can I solve the meta problem? How can I solve the problem of getting better at solving problems? And that for me, I think is a really important insight. And so my dream is somehow to bring together everything that I've learned all the way back from UCLA days through my long journey to something that I think can really be important for the world, I hope, this time.
Awesome. So we are nearing the end of the event, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, especially on a weekend. So I guess I'll just close with a question of my own, which is, are there any sort of books, podcasts, newsletters, things that you've read that you've found really helpful in your journey along the way?
Yeah, I'm reading a book now that I love and recommend every entrepreneur here read it. It's by Yancey Strickler, who's the co-founder of Kickstarter, and it's called something like "This Could Be Our Future," a manifesto for something. Someone can Google it and put it into the chat. But it really talks about how our world came to be the way it is, things that we accept as just, oh, that's how it is, you know, transportation, just everything about it, malls. And we don't realize that the world is shaped by the decisions we make and the metrics we pursue. And if you set up the rules of a game in a certain way, you're going to achieve success by that dimension only. He talks about having a more blended model. Don't just go for financial as the only metric. You know, everyone has been saying, you know, financial success, returning value to shareholders is the only thing we need to worry about. He talks about having other values in the companies that you start and how that could really impact the world in a positive way. So I would encourage everybody to, you know, to just, as you're starting your companies, to really think about what values do you have as your company. And yes, be successful, be profitable, do important things, but do it with a more blended value system. And I think that can have huge impact. So I'm enjoying that book immensely.
Cool. Thanks so much, Adam. We really appreciate your time. Loved hearing about your magic anecdotes, by the way, because when researching you, I did stumble upon a video of you doing magic tricks on Penn and Teller. So I will say that. So you can check it out on YouTube if you all want. But thank you so much, Adam, once again. And I'll turn it back to Chloe just to close the event briefly.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Miriam and Ritu, for all our amazing speakers today. And thank you to our amazing organizers, all of ACM, BE, and UPE. And thank you all of you for attending and taking out time from your Saturday for attending our lovely event. I know it's a crazy weekend because of UCLA's Final Four game. So thank you extra for making the time. And yeah, and then I guess just a logistics note, this recording will be posted on YouTube in case you want to go back and replay anything you missed or just want to revisit. But yeah, thank you so much.